I'm Blake Hargreaves, and this is Future Stops. You're hearing Organized Crime performing the William Tell Overture. The canon sounds in this rendition are being made by Rachel Mahon, one half of this comedy organ duo popping balloons on stage. When not performing live comedy, Rachel Mahon is music director at Coventry Cathedral in the UK, which has a unique connection to Canada and a fascinating history. Today on the show, we'll trace the path that led this Canadian organist to one of the top jobs in the UK, starting with an early visit to Coventry.
I grew up singing at Grace Church in Toronto. I was in the choir there, and we went on a choir tour to the UK in 2001, so I was 11. And I think we did a whole week at Coventry Cathedral. So that was my first time in the cathedral. And, it's just interesting how things turn out, because at that age, I had no plans to be an organist. I mean, I couldn't even really play piano at that point. So it's just funny how things turn out. I do remember the building, and I remember being struck by how different it was to any other cathedral or church that I'd been in. Obviously, the size of it is very impressive. It's a huge space, cavernous, you could say, and has a very interesting acoustic. There's a very long echo. But yeah, I think I remember it being very different. That's all I can say, really. It was a long time ago now. Yeah, the organ is really special. It sounds fantastic in the space it was built for. It's very versatile. It can do all sorts of different repertoire. And it's voiced beautifully. All of the ranks sound sweet and hard to say, but it just sounds right. Sometimes you can hear an 8-foot flute and you think, oh, that's actually sounds a bit too fat. That might be a weird way to describe it, but or you think, oh, that trumpet sounds a little bit too brash or something. But you don't get that at Coventry. Actually, every sound is beautiful, and that's a very, I think, rare thing, and it's a wonderful thing. So while you're playing, it doesn't matter if you're playing a sort of very soft clarinet tune or you're playing on strings, which and they've got two sets of strings. They've got English strings, they've got French strings, or if you're playing full organ, it all sounds really, really, really fine, and it fills the building, which is what you want from an organ. You don't want an organ that is too small for a space, and similarly, you don't want an organ that is too large for a space, because then that can be sort of unpleasant if people are being blasted all the time. So in that way, it really is a sort of treasure of an organ. It's very comfortable to play. It deserves its reputation as one of the world's best instruments.
Canadians can take some credit for the high quality of the organ at Coventry. The church and organ were mostly destroyed in World War II during the Coventry Blitz. In the years that followed, Canadian composer Healy Willan wanted to do something to help.
After World War II, the RCCO, which is the Royal Canadian College of Organists, obviously, decided to fundraise for British organs that had been destroyed in the war. And Willan played benefit concerts for this. I think he went across Canada and did so. I read that somewhere. And they, in the end, decided to give all the money to Coventry because, of course, Coventry was obliterated in the Coventry Blitz. And it's really a great place to go and see now because the ruins are still standing. You can see the shell of the old cathedral. So you see the walls standing, and you can walk through there, and it's really a very beautiful spot and a part of history. But anyway, so they needed to rebuild, and get a new organ in there as well. So most all of those Canadian donations went to Coventry, and I think that covered about sort of 3/5 of the cost of a new organ, which is a huge expense. And I also read that Willen actually came to Coventry to present the check to the provost of the cathedral here. And there's also another Canadian connection in that the ceiling of the cathedral is made of Canadian cedar, and I think that was also a gift from Canada. And then the cathedral, as sort of a thank you, sort of put it's like a brass maple leaf in the floor at the west end of the cathedral. So as soon as you walk in, you see there's the maple leaf. Well, why is that here? So that's sort of how I found out about this, because I was thinking, well, why on earth is there a Canadian maple leaf in the middle of Coventry Cathedral? I find that whenever I play, I'm always playing faster than I feel or think I am. And then whenever I listen back to a recording, I think, oh wow, that's like way faster than I thought it was going. And so then you adjust according to that, because that's what people who aren't playing are going to be hearing, especially if they're out sort of way out in the nave, and you're sitting at the console, which so in Coventry Cathedral, the console is where you play the organ from. It's quite near the front, so it's very close to the pipes. So when you're playing, everything might sound very clear to you and very immediate, but the audience or congregation are sitting way out in the middle and towards the back. And so the sound has to travel farther to hit them. And by that time, it's sort of already swirling around in the building. When you're playing, you sort of have to take the acoustics, you have to consider them carefully and how the organ will come across in really anything you're doing. So I think that includes sort of leaving more space in your playing, more time for breathing and just letting the sound fill the space, and then clearing before you maybe go on to the next phrase or whatever it is. You have to sort of work with the acoustics and consider them, I guess, part of the music. So you do play differently. You might want to play more articulated. So that means sort of giving each note a bit more individual prominence, I guess, sort of playing more detached, something like that, which just makes it clearer to listen to, because it's such a vast place that, the sound can all sort of get muddied together. If you're standing under the dome, all the sound just kind of swirls around together, and it just sounds like sort of a mesh of sound. So you need to do something to break that up and make it intelligible to your listener. The way I deal with the acoustic in Coventry Cathedral might be really different to how someone else deals with it. And you do have to sort of maybe change how you play a bit, but I still think you do put your own stamp on it and do what you want ultimately. But again, I guess you're a little bit subservient to the building.
When she began working at Coventry, Rachel Mahon recognized in this Canadian connection an opportunity to merge the building, the organ, and Canadian music by recording an album celebrating Canadian composers.
I sort of had an idea for a few years before actually even working at Coventry that I knew I wanted to do an album of Canadian music. And, because there aren't really many albums of Canadian organ music. And because I'm over here in this part of the world, I thought it would be a great way to showcase our music. So I already had that idea. And then when I got the job at Coventry, it was kind of a match made in heaven because I didn't know about this history, but I soon found out, and I thought, this is kind of, I have to make this album now. It's too good to be true. It's such a good background story, such a good connection. So I just, basically it was in the first month I started working here, because I already had the idea. this sort of just spurred me on, and I applied to the Canada Council for the Arts for a grant to fund this project, and luckily they agreed it was a good project, and so I was given a grant, and that funded the entire thing. So I'm very grateful to them, and I'm very happy with the result of it. I found an excellent record label over here. They're Delphian Records. They're based in Scotland. They captured the organ absolutely stunningly, and it's a great sound. The other thing, well, I wanted a variety of pieces. I wanted a good sort of set of different music. And the Bales was really a nice idea because he was a student of Willem, and the Petite Suite is just a very, very small, sort of gentle. Well, the middle movement's gentle, but it's a sort of miniature that works really well between larger works. And then I needed another small work, and the Ruth Watson Henderson, I think, is a really interesting piece, and also kind of it suits the organ well, and it suits the architecture of the building. If you ever go to Coventry, you look at the sort of stained glass and the colors that are all sort of put together, and it just reminded me of the Ruth Watson Henderson, which is a set of variations. And so again, very, very colorful on the organ, showing off a multitude of different stops, waves of sound, and changing, going from sort of pianissimo to forte, really worked well on the instrument. And then the Lorraine, I already played 2 movements of the symphony, and I was learning the rest of it, and I love her music. I love the toccata. It's a sort of French style finale of the symphony, and that works so well on the Coventry organ, this sort of French style. And I did sort of communicate with Rochelle before recording, because I wanted to get it right, and I wanted to sort of not offend her with my with my interpretation at all, and she's actually really, really open to other ideas, and well, not other ideas, but she's flexible and she's practical, but also with particularly with the prelude in the symphony, it doesn't sort of give. Well, I sort of expanded upon the registration instructions, as you have to sort of adjust that. So that's what sounds you use, what pipes you use. You have to adjust that according to what organ you're on anyway. But I was sort of being very, very detailed with adding stops, taking them away. And she basically, I think she said, sort of do what sort of sounds good and works in the building, which is really great to hear from the composer, and freeing in a way. You don't need to feel sort of chained to exactly what the score says in that regard.
You're listening to the FutureStops podcast, an initiative of the Royal Canadian College of Organists. My name's Blake Hargreaves, and I'm your host as we explore the world of the 21st century organ. We just heard today's feature piece, the Toccata movement of Rachel Lauren's Organ Symphony No. 1, performed by Rachel Mahon on the organ at Coventry Cathedral. Alongside the high-profile trajectory to her incredible job at Coventry, Rachel Mahon has been building a very different sort of reputation for hijinks and goofing around in her comedy duo Organized Crime, which features the pipe organ and upsets classical music traditions to entertain.
Well, it's kind of, Organized Crime is a passion project, you could say. I like how that sentence is going to anyone taken out of context is going to sound completely bizarre. But Organized Crime is my organ duo partnership with my friend and colleague Sarah Svendsen, who's also a fantastic organist. And we were at university together, and we basically were just very silly together, have fun, and we wanted to incorporate this on the organ, and so Organized Crime was born. And basically we write shows together, and they're comedy shows. That's the sort of the main point of Organized Crime, is that it's a comedy show, and we happen to play organ. So we try to include as many sort of musical jokes as we can, but also just sort of any kind of silliness we can get in there, we do. There are multiple costume changes and various props, and we play sort of, we use the phone while we play upside down, we sort of do the splits, we all sorts of things, and we try and include like other instruments when possible. And so our most recent show is basically a complete narrative. There's a whole sort of plot, and then little sort of skits happen throughout, and it's just a whole lot of fun. Basically, it's a come have a good time, be entertained kind of show. Very different to a straight-laced organ concert. It's not really it's not the same thing at all, actually. We were students in Toronto, University of Toronto, and the RCCO in Toronto would do a Halloween concert. They still do, actually, Halloween concert every year featuring student organists. And this would actually be a fundraiser to pay for the student memberships. So a really good cause. And anyway, they said, oh, well, we need someone to play the Toccata and Fugue in D minor. And neither of us played it. And so we were like, oh, well, we don't want to learn it, like a bit lazy or something. And so we said, okay, well, let's do it together. And we also, after class, because being in the organ class, the organ performance class, we would go to listen to the other students perform every week and try to improve our sort of listening skills. That was the point of the class. And we also got to explore all the organs in Toronto. So any given week, we could be somewhere else in the city. And so we'd either travel back to the university together, or we'd, stop off at the mall and go shopping. And so we bought these sparkly heels, and we thought, oh, let's play in these. That would be hilarious for the Bach. And then we thought, okay, well, let's not just have matching shoes. Let's have matching outfits. So then we got these sparkly dresses to wear, and then we played it to our professors, and we were doing like a few sort of funny things, and then both of our professors said, you need to ham it up, like go even further, be even sillier. And so basically we took that and ran with it. And and so that Halloween concert, we had a huge audience, actually. We really promoted it that year. We had about 700 people, and they loved it. They loved the sort of silly interpretation, what we were doing. Well, I mean, if you closed your eyes and listened, it just sounded like standard Toccata and Fugue in D minor. But if you watch what we were doing, that sort of changed it completely. But after the success of that, we decided actually this was a lot of fun and we wanted to keep doing it. So we practiced together, and we had a regular practice session every week, and we wrote our script together. And so I think it was about 9 months later, we did a full-length show, and it just sort of went from there. That's sort of the whole story. It all comes from buying matching shoes. Yeah, it's obviously sort of very different to what I do every day. Running a music department at a cathedral is like quite a full-on job, and quite a big responsibility. But the organized crime is something that we both love doing. We enjoy it, and audiences enjoy it too. So, but like I said, it's sort of it's definitely a part-time thing. But we do try and carve out time for it. But it is so different from what both of us do in everyday life that we really like the variety. It makes a nice sort of change of scene, and we like what we do. We like working together. So we sort of try and make an effort to make it fit into our lives.
Rachel Mahon's diverse career shows that in the 21st century, the conventional boundaries of organ music and organ culture are stretching and changing. And she's just getting started. Her CD, Canadian Organ Music, recorded at Coventry, showcases Canadian culture in the organ world in both the music and the compelling story of the organ's reconstruction. We'd like to thank Rachel Mahon for joining us on Future Stops. To hear more music like the selections we played today, recorded on this historic pipe organ, you can find links to Rachel Mahon's CD on all of our social media accounts. And if you're not subscribed to the Future Stops podcast and social accounts already, what are you waiting for? Future Stops is the place to learn about the organ's growing role in contemporary music and culture. Future Stops is a podcast from the Royal Canadian College of Organists, produced by Andrew O'Connor with Haley Raymond as community manager and executive producer Elizabeth Shannon. I'm your host, Blake Hargreaves. Thanks for listening.